All right, so as I had said, we're going to discuss portion control today. And outcomes from the course today, you should be able to compare at least 3 everyday objects to its respective food portion and list at least 3 ways to control food portions. And everybody grabbed a handout as they came through. All right, so this is kind of just some fun information here. So 100 extra calories every day can lead to 10-pound weight gain at the end of the year. Okay, so like let's just say your daily calorie needs are, I don't know, 2,000, and you start eating 2,100. So theoretically, by the end of the year, you would have a 10-pound weight gain. So an example of 100 calories would be like a little 100 calorie snack pack. That doesn't seem like it's anything, but again, little by little, at the end of the year, you would see that gain. 250 extra calories daily leads to a ½ pound weekly, or 26 pounds at the end of the year. So an example of 250 calories would be one Starbucks chai latte with low-fat milk, grande size, so that's about 262 calories in one of those. And then 500 calories every day leads to a pound a week, or 52 pounds a year. So an example here, and this is good timing with this time of year, 2 ounces of tortilla chips with 1 frozen margarita. So that breaks down to 2 ounces of tequila, 4.5 ounces of Jose Cuervo margarita mix, and that's 523 calories. So, and then if we're talking going backwards, you know, same principles here. If you cut 100 extra calories a day, theoretically you should lose 10 pounds a year, and so on. All right, so there's a little quiz, and I don't know if it's going to let me get to it. The internet here is a little iffy, so I'll just kind of let you know. Let's see, oh, it's not going to let me go down there, I don't think. All right, so 20 years ago, so basically this little portion quiz goes over what portions were like 20 years ago and what they are now. So 20 years ago, 1 cup of coffee had 45 calories. I don't know if I'm going to be able to see this. Yeah, I've got all these pop-up things. Darn it. Okay, maybe not. Well, okay, so a mocha coffee today, that doesn't tell me either. Okay. All right, here, I can read the blueberry muffin. So 20 years ago, 1.5 ounce blueberry muffin had 210 calories. Today, a blueberry muffin has about 500 calories. 2 pepperoni pizza slices had 500 calories about 20 years ago. Today, we're looking at 2 pepperoni slices have 850 calories. A chocolate chip cookie, which was at least 1.5 inch diameter, was 55 calories 20 years ago. Today we're looking at a cookie is 275 calories, and that would require you to wash your car for 1 hour and 15 minutes. Okay, now that little thing disappeared. So pepperoni pizza today for 850 calories, that would require you to golf and carry your clubs and walk for 1 hour. And then the blueberry muffin at 500 calories, vacuum for 1.5 hours. And then, okay, here, the mocha coffee with steamed whole milk and mocha syrup, 350 calories, walk for, I believe that says 1 hour and 20 minutes. So anyway, just to give you some ideas of how much activity you would have to do to burn that off. And how drastically our portion sizes have changed in the last few decades, which isn't that long. And some more examples here. So 20 years ago, our bagel was 3 inches in diameter for 140 calories. Now we're looking at double that, so 6 inches in diameter for 350 calories. A cheeseburger was 333 calories. It is now 590. 1 cup of spaghetti with sauce and 3 small meatballs was 500 calories 20 years ago. Now we're looking at double again. 2 cups of spaghetti with sauce and 3 large meatballs for 1,025 calories. So for those of you that are following, 12 to 1,500 calories a day, that one meal almost covers your entire day. Soda used to be 6.5 ounces at 85 calories. Now it's 20 ounces for 300. And fries were 2.4 ounces at 210 calories. Now we're looking at 6.9 ounces and 610 calories. And I always say with the fries too, it's likely for most of you, if you're going to have fries, you're probably not, that's not going to be your entire meal, right? You're probably going to have a beverage, you're probably going to have a sandwich or something to go along with it. So that can really add up at the end of the meal. All right, so reasons why we want to get our portions under control. Obesity increases the susceptibility for hypertension, so high blood pressure, coronary heart disease, and stroke, type 2 diabetes, joint wear and discomfort, and of course breathing difficulties, and that might include sleep apnea as well. So there's all sorts of ways that we can measure our portions, and we'll talk about most of these. Of course you can use a weight scale, but you have to think of how practical that is. You know, that's something that you probably could do at home, but if you're out somewhere, you're probably not going to want to whip out your scale and be measuring things at the dinner table, right? Of course, the plate method, that's something that I always talk about probably in almost all of the presentations, and we'll briefly review that. Everyday objects, so comparing portion sizes to your fist or a baseball, we'll talk about that. And then of course, yeah, you can use the hands. And then using the same utensils. So for instance, if you always eat your oatmeal out of the same bowl, then you'll kind of know, okay, up to here is about a cup. Or if you use the same glasses all the time, okay, up to here is about 8 ounces. So using the same utensils on a daily basis can really help as well. So with some practice, you will only need to look at the food to know how many servings are on your plate. Of course, a good place to start is knowing how many calories your body requires, and a lot of you can figure that out by using like the MyFitnessPals and the Spark Peoples. You can also go to Mayo Clinic has a calculator as well, so you can plug in your information there and they'll do it for you. ChooseMyPlate.gov also has a wonderful website that will help you to determine your calorie needs. And not only that, ChooseMyPlate.gov also has wonderful like portion comparisons. So for instance, if you wanted to know how many cherries is one serving of fruit, you could look that sort of thing up in their database and it would tell you. And then of course metabolic testing, which I mentioned before we got into the presentation. So Epic Med Spa does offer the metabolic test over there. It does measure your calorie needs. It measures your calorie needs at rest, and it measures your needs, how much you have to eat in order to lose weight. So if you're ever curious about knowing that, you can have that done too. All right, so choose my plates. So these are some of the things that are recommended from the USDA, and these are what you want to do is obtain adequate servings from each of these food groups. Now, everybody is slightly different. Again, some of you might be on 1,500 calories, some of you might be on 2,000. So these servings here will change depending on your needs, but these are just general recommendations here. So fruit, we should be aiming for somewhere between 1.5 to 2 cups every day, and I'll go through what a serving is as well. Vegetables should be between 2.5 to 3 cups a day, if not more. A lot of the research is coming out that we really should be eating much more vegetables than we are. So this is your baseline here. Meat, beans, eggs, and nuts, somewhere between 5 and 6.5 ounces, focusing on lean sources of meats. Grains, between 5 and 8 ounces, focusing on whole grains. Dairy, 3 cups a day, again, aiming for low-fat or non-fat dairy products. And then oils, somewhere between 5 to 7 teaspoons a day, again, aiming for heart-healthy oils. And again, I'll give some examples as we go on. So, starting with fruit. 1 serving of fruit includes 1/2 cup of canned fruit. And if you do canned fruit, I usually recommend getting it in its own juice. You know, if you get it in like heavy syrup, then that's going to be a lot of extra sugar and calories. 1/4 cup of dried fruit is a serving. 1 small whole, so that would be, a small banana, a small pear, small orange, or 1 cup cubed, so that might be, like watermelon or honeydew. So an example here that they have depicted, and again, this came right off of ChooseMyPlate.gov. So fruit cocktail is 1/2 cup. So that's about what it would look like if you had a 6-inch wide bowl. Vegetables, 1 serving is either half a cup of cooked or 2 cups raw. An example here would be raw baby spinach. So 1 cup counts as a half a cup dark green vegetables. So your spinaches, your kales, arugula, those types of things. Meat and beans, so 1 serving is either 3 ounces of meat, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, 1/4 cup of nuts, or half a cup of beans. An example here is beef strip steak for 5 ounces, and that's the cooked weight. Grains includes 1 slice of bread, 1 cup of dry cereal, a half a cup of rice or pasta. Example here is oatmeal. A half a cup counts as 1 ounce equivalent of whole grains. Milk. 1 cup of milk, 6 ounces of yogurt, or 1 slice of cheese. The example here is Swiss cheese, so 2 slices, or 3/4 ounce each. At 3/4 ounce each counts as 1 cup of dairy. And then for oils, 1 teaspoon is considered 1 serving. And again, that doesn't mean that's all you get for the day. If you go back to that other slide, it said, I think, 5 to 7 teaspoons a day. And then you've got the handout that you should have gotten when you came through the door. So this compares everyday items, and this is kind of nice because, again, if you're out somewhere, if you're at a barbecue or if you're at a restaurant and you're not quite sure about the portion that's on your plate, you can compare it to some everyday items. So for instance, let's see, fruits and vegetables. 1 medium fruit is the size of a baseball. Grains, 1 pancake is the size of a DVD. 3 ounces of lean meat is the size of a deck of cards. 1 cup of yogurt, again, is a baseball. 1 teaspoon of butter or spread is the size of a poker chip. And a cup of fries is about 10 fries. So it's kind of nice because it maps it out for you. And then, of course, you could always use your hands as well. So 1 entire fist is about a cup, and you can use that to measure things like fruits, vegetables, casserole-type dishes. 1 palm without the fingers is about 3 ounces, so you can use that for your meat, fish, and poultry. 1 handful, so just enough to fill the depression in your hand, that's about 1 ounce when we're talking about things like nuts and raisins. 2 handfuls is 1 ounce when we're talking about things like chips, popcorn, pretzels. 1 entire thumb is 1 ounce, so you can use that for things like peanut butter or hard cheese. And then 1 thumb tip from the joint up, that's a teaspoon, and you can use that for cooking oil, mayonnaise, butter, and sugar. And then, of course, the plate method, I'll just review this quickly since I think all of you have seen this before. But basically what you can do, especially if you're at a barbecue or a potluck type of situation, you can divide your plate up into 4 sections. Half of your plate should be fruit and vegetable, or you could make it all vegetable. It's up to you. And then the other 2 quarters of your plate should be for your starchy or your carbohydrate food and your protein food. So it's a nice way to keep everything in balance and portion controlled. So this is kind of an example of like a psychological thing. So if you'll notice, this is all the same portion of food, but the bigger your plate gets, right, it looks like you're getting a smaller portion. So again, it's just kind of mind trickery. So the idea here is that you want to use a smaller plate. 9 inches or less is ideal, because again, it's just going to look like you're getting more. But each plate contains 3 ounces of tuna, 1 cup of carrots, and a half a cup of wild rice. So you've got hardly any negative space here, and you come down here and it looks like you want to fill that up. And then, of course, there's all sorts of things on the market now. There's portion-controlled plates such as these. This is my precise portions. There's other ones that I've seen too. Or even like the kids' little kid trays have the separate, little separate compartments on there. You can use things like that if you like at home. That's another option as well. Or, as I said, you can just use the plate method and kind of divide it up on on your own too. All right, so there's a difference between portion and serving size. We kind of use those interchangeably, but there are some differences. Portion is how much of a food you consume versus serving is what the USDA recommends. So for instance, you might have, 6 cookies, but on the package, the serving size might be 3. So your portion would be 6, the serving would be 3, if that makes sense. So knowing your serving size can help you determine how full portions when you're looking at your food labels. Again, if it recommends 3 as a serving, you might want to stick to that recommendation or go lower depending on your own needs. And examples of portion-controlled meals would be like high school lunches. Those are all regulated by the government and they're all portion-controlled. Or if you go to hospitals too, a lot of those portions are regulated as well. So as far as tips for portion control, you can make your own snack bags, especially if you're the type of person that likes to snack at night, while you're watching your favorite television show or, perusing the internet or whatever. So perhaps you take, your favorite snack in the kitchen, portion it out into a snack bag or portion it out into a little dish, and then go and sit and do whatever you're going to do with it, as opposed to taking the whole container. Again, using smaller dishes, less than 9 inches in diameter. Skip seconds. So, and with that, you can kind of determine, are you truly hungry or is it just that the food is good and you would like some more? Usually what I'll tell people to do is wait about 10 to 15 minutes. If you've had an entire plate, you've had a balanced meal, wait about 10 to 15 minutes because sometimes the stomach, the message from the stomach to the brain takes a little while. So, usually they say it takes about 20 minutes for your stomach to tell your brain that it's full. So if you just wait, an extra 10, 15 minutes after your meal is completed, you may find that you really aren't that hungry and you can go without the seconds. Separate your leftovers into portion-controlled containers and freeze them for later. If you're at a restaurant, you can, get a doggy bag or a take-home container. And what you can do here too is you can ask the waiter or the waitress to bag up half of the meal before it even comes to you. Because we tend to want to keep nibbling on it, right? If we're sitting with company, even if we feel like we're done, if it's still sitting there, we tend to want to take more. So you can ask them to do that ahead of time so that it's packaged away and you're not tempted to go into the package. Of course, again, if you're at the restaurant, you can share your appetizers and desserts if it's a special occasion and you really want that piece of cake or whatever. Perhaps you have the piece of cake, but you share it with your company. Use caution with mini snacks. So I'll use those 100-calorie packs again. Those are wonderful because they're, pre-portioned out. But if you feel like you keep taking another and taking another and taking another because you're not full or you're not satisfied off of that, you want to figure out if that's really an appropriate snack for you or if you really just need to be eating a more balanced meal. Remove distractions. I think this is a big one for just about all of us. Again, we always are multitasking everything we do. We've got to be on our phone while we're eating. We've got to be watching TV while we're eating, on the internet while we're eating, whatever. So as much as possible, if you can remove those distractions, to really pay attention and practice mindful eating. So pay attention to the flavor of the food, the texture of the food, any pleasant memories that it might bring to mind. So really savor what you're eating. Because I don't know about you guys, but if I'm on the internet while I'm eating, I can just keep eating and not really, it's like, oh, I'm done with my meal or my snack, I need more. So try to remove those distractions. You can put on some music, for some ambiance in the background at dinner time or whatever, that's fine. Opt for buffet style versus family style. So especially if you're entertaining, if it's like a holiday or whatever, or if you're going to do 4th of July coming up. So have a table off to the side where everything sits, as opposed to if you're doing a sit-down dinner, having everything. If you've got the spread right there at the table, you're more likely to just reach over and grab another spoonful, right? If you've got to actually physically get up to go get it, it's that extra step that might make you think. You can do more small meals. So again, having snacks in between meals can control hunger, especially if you know, like let's say you have breakfast at 7 a.m. and you know you're not going to get to lunch until 1 o'clock. It's probably a good idea to have another small meal or a snack in between breakfast and lunch, so that by the time you get to lunch you're not overeating and choosing less healthy foods. For restaurants, you can order off the kiddie menu. I think I've told several people this before, but like Outback has their Joey menu or whatever. Honestly, the chicken breast, it's probably about a 2-ounce breast, so it's a pretty adequate portion. Yeah, it's probably between 2 and 3 ounces. So that's a pretty adequate portion for a meal, especially if you're cutting your calories to 12 or 1,500. And it will save you money too. Again, use designated dishes. So like I mentioned before, if you're always using the same bowl for oatmeal, the same cup for beverages, then you will kind of know where to eyeball the level. Watch out with taste testing. If you're the cook or the baker in the family, you know, and you like to do a lot of taste testing, I do realize that's probably an important part of preparing whatever you're preparing. But be very, very careful with that, because that can really add up a lot of calories by the time you're done preparing a meal. And along with that, for those of you that are food journaling, which all of you should be, include bites of things. I know that's a little hard to quantify in your food journals, but I don't know, add an extra 100 calories or something in there. Make sure that you're putting that stuff in there. Slow down while you're eating. That's another thing. Like I said, it takes your brain 20 minutes to tell your stomach 20 minutes to tell your brain that it's full. So you can eat quite a bit in that 20-minute period. So slow down, put your fork down in between bites. Some people have tried doing chopsticks at meals. You can do that if you want. But usually I'll just tell people to put your fork down in between bites. Make sure you're thoroughly chewing your food. Follow regular meal intervals. So again, if you're going more than 5 hours, 4 to 5 hours in between meals, that's when you start to get in that danger zone of your blood sugar dropping, your energy levels dropping, and then that's when you start to want the quick, convenient foods or eating the double portions. Practice balanced snacking. Talked about that as well. If you're going to go a long period in between, for instance, breakfast and lunch, having a balanced snack. So an example of a balanced snack would be something that's got protein and like a good carbohydrate. So you could do a Greek yogurt, you could do a string cheese and a piece of fruit, or cottage cheese and some fruit. Any other ideas? Nuts? Any other ideas for snacks that you like to do? Okay, peanut butter and banana, any of those would work, or even a half a sandwich would work. Make sure that you're hydrating appropriately. This can also play into portion control. You know, you might feel like you're hungry, and it might actually be that your body needs water or fluids. So make sure that you're getting enough to drink. The general rule of thumb is whatever your weight is, you cut that in half, and that would be how many ounces of water you should be drinking a day. And remember, it doesn't all have to be water. It can be from milk, it could be from unsweetened tea, it could be from low sodium vegetable juice, broth. All of those count towards your fluid goals. And then keep in mind, if you're coming in here and you're having a major sweat session, you need to add on to what your baseline fluid needs are. Avoid empty carbohydrates. So I have a lot of clients that like to do pretzels for snacks. And it's not that that's a bad choice, but when you do something that just is mainly carbs by itself, your blood sugar tends to do this. And when it's doing this, that's when you get hungry. That's when you can keep eating and not feel satisfied. So if you're going to do a carbohydrate, like I said, either pair it with a protein or do a complex carbohydrate, something that's got some fiber in it. So like at your meals, you could do whole grain pasta or brown rice or quinoa, something that's got a little protein and fiber in it, okay, as opposed to like the white rices and the white pastas. Enjoy foods that make you work. So for instance, nuts. Those are foods that make you work. If you like peanuts and you've got to shell them, you know, it's going to take you longer to eat a portion because you're actually having to work at it, right? Focus on foods that fill you up as well. Avoid drastic calorie restrictions, and I was just talking to somebody before the session started. You know, if you're not seeing the results, and you're, at 1,200 calories or even 1,400 and you're still not seeing results, and you're in here and you're working out and you feel like you're eating right, it also could be that you're not eating enough. Remember that your body can go into starvation mode and start to conserve the calories. So you want to make sure that your body is getting enough calories as well. So make sure you're not doing too drastic of a restriction. So foods that make you full, foods that have high water content help with that, and they help hydrate you as well. So milk, soups, lean meats, fish and poultry are good for that. Of course, water, fruits and vegetables also. High water and fiber content, so that would be like beans and nuts as well. Example here, you can have a full cup of grapes versus 1/4 cup of raisins. The reason for that, with raisins, they're dehydrated, right? They don't have the water content. So it's not that you can't have raisins, it's just that you get more if you have the grapes because the water content is higher. So foods with low water content tend to be higher in calories per ounce. That's the other reason why you can only do 1/4 of a cup of raisins versus a full cup of grapes for a serving. Other ways to fill up. You can make the salad as the main entree and just have like the meat as the complement. Add fresh fruit or almonds to your cereal or yogurt, especially if you're going to do cereal, because again, cereal is mostly carbohydrates, so you want to have something that's got a little protein and a little fiber to bulk up that meal. Add veggies to sandwiches and eggs. That's a great way to sneak them in if you're not real big on your vegetables, or if you're having a tough time getting in your vegetable servings. Even just adding some lettuce to a sandwich or a sliced tomato to a sandwich will kind of sneak some of that in. And along with that too, if you're looking for different spread ideas for sandwich type meals, you can do some guacamole, a thin spread of guacamole, or some hummus as a spread instead of like the mayos and the butters. Preface your meal with salad or low sodium soup. So again, you can start to fill up on some of that water and that fiber. Choose fruit over juice. So 1 serving of juice is only a 1/2 cup. So again, I'm kind of eyeballing. So about a 1/2 cup, which isn't much. Whereas if you get to eat a whole piece of fruit, it's probably going to satisfy you a little more because the fiber content is higher. Choose popcorn over chips or pretzels. Popcorn has fiber in it. So again, it's likely to make you feel a little more satisfied. And then choose whole grains over refined grains, which we talked about that. One word on nutrition and exercise as well, because we did kind of talk about how much you'd have to do to burn off some of those foods. Remember that the body uses as much as it needs at a time, and then the rest is stored as fat. Okay, so it is important to get here to the gym, make sure you're counterbalancing. Obesity and physical inactivity may account for 25 to 30% of several major cancers, including colon, breast, endometrial, kidney, and cancer of the esophagus. So it's really important that we get this under control. All right, so I would like to entertain any questions or any other ideas that we didn't talk about.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Using your hand as a portion measure, my hands are probably bigger than yours.
Yes.
Any suggestions, or whose hands was that?
It is more of a woman's hand. Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, if you're out somewhere, it isn't going to be exact, right? If you're going to use your fist.
Would be fine, right? But it's probably more than 3 ounces.
Yeah. However, keep in mind, your needs are going to be different than a woman's. And so it's probably okay if you're still using your own hand, because your portions are likely going to be a little more. Because men get to usually have a little more than women anyhow. But yeah, I mean, if you're out somewhere, that's probably the best thing. Or again, you can use the handout that I provided too. You can kind of use that as well, comparing it to everyday objects too. But yeah, you're probably not gonna wanna whip out a scale at a restaurant or do that, so. So yeah, I would still say that your hand is probably just fine. But yeah, that's a great question. Other questions or concerns or ideas? Okay. Oh yeah, sorry.
How many servings of bread would be considered normal per day?
So what did we say? 5 to 8 ounces, I believe it was, or was it 6 to 8 ounces?
5 to 8 ounces of bread.
5 to 8 ounces. Okay. So technically, you could do 5 to 8 slices.
So if you were eating like the low-cal bread, which is only 45 calories a slice, so like 2 slices of that would be equal to like 1 regular slice of bread.
Oh.
Like for
A
sandwich.
good way to figure that out is I usually go by carbohydrate content. So usually I'll say 15 grams of carbohydrate is considered 1 carb choice. So if you look on the label and it says, I don't know, 17 grams per slice, then I would still count that as 1 ounce per slice. Does that make
Okay,
sense
sure,
how I'm
yeah.
explaining it? Okay. But yeah, so technically you could do, you know, depending on what it says on the label for carbohydrates, technically you could do 5 to 8 ounces, but if you're gonna spend, you know, you wouldn't be able to do any other carbs then if you're gonna do 5 to 8 slices.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
How do diet sodas fit into the whole water intake? Or do they count?
I wouldn't count them. I mean, they are fluids, but I don't like to count them because they don't offer us very good nutrition. So I would still say, I mean, if you're going to drink them, I would still do fluids from other sources on top of that. Especially if it's
Does that count for like coffee too?
coffee does count. I know that goes back and forth. Coffee does count. But I definitely would do more from water or other sources as opposed to getting all, 8 cups from just coffee, right? So if you're doing, a couple cups a day, I think that's fine, but trying to get the majority from water would be best. And then again, yeah, if you're working your butt off in here too, make sure you're getting extra water, not extra coffee. Okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm surprised as I'm journaling to see the carb count even in some fruits.
Oh, sure.
Okay, like yesterday for breakfast I had scrambled eggs. I mean, I don't know, I'm guessing, how much this is. I don't know. 1, I don't know.
Okay.
But, and then small orange juice, about this much at most. Had an apricot and some brown berry whole grain, 1 slice of bread. That came to 50 carbs. I thought, wow! I was just surprised, and the bulk of it came from the orange juice and the bread.
Mm-hmm.
I was just, sometimes I'm just blown away at carbs that are in like a banana or other fruits. I'm just surprised
Mm-hmm.
at it.
Yeah, and don't get too alarmed by carbs from food sources like fruits and whole grains. Don't get too alarmed by that because the way that they're packaged, the way that those carbohydrates are packaged, they're packaged with fiber, they're packaged with antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. And so the way that your body absorbs carbohydrates from fruits and whole grains is much different than carbohydrates from like candy and soda and those types of foods. So don't get too alarmed by that. And carbs are in just about everything. I mean, aside from meat, fish, poultry, and your non-starchy vegetables, carbs are in just about everything. They're abundant. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, we require carbohydrates. Our brain requires a certain level of carbohydrates to function appropriately. Our muscles do require carbohydrates for energy. So we do need a baseline of carbohydrates. So again, don't get alarmed by that. Usually what I will tell people though is you want to try to space out your carbs throughout the day. And then a lot of people try to get them earlier in the day as opposed to later at night too. Because again, if you're more active during the day, then you're kind of using up those carbs for your energy, right? But yeah, juice, watch the sugar content on the juice. If it's got sugar added to it, then that's just adding unnecessary carbs. There's carbs that's naturally found in fruit, so you're never going to get away from carbs from fruits. But if it's got added sugar in the juice, that's not necessary. We don't need the added sugar carbs. Does that make sense?
I was just surprised.
Sure, okay, so, yeah. Yeah, they're in just about everything we eat, so it does add up quickly once you start adding in your fruits and, yeah, if you're doing juice. Yeah,
Can we talk a little bit about sodium?
sure.
What are the negatives? What's so terrible about sodium?
Okay, so if you're eating too much sodium, it can negatively affect your blood pressure, and it can also make you retain water or make you feel bloated, puffy, and women especially are a little more sensitive to that around their cycles. So keep that in mind too. I have a lot of women that will tell me that, you know, if they have high sodium meal like the night before, then they come here and get weighed, it really shows up on the scale. So yeah, and your heart functions, there's a sodium potassium pump that helps your heart pump. So if you've got sodium way up here and your potassium is way down here, you're getting irregularities with your blood pressure. So you want to try to keep those levels, you know, adequate so they're balancing one another out. So yeah, the American Heart Association, well, they want to make it 1,500 milligrams a day. That's very difficult unless you're pretty much cooking from scratch. So I still tell people to follow a maximum of 2,300 milligrams a day. If you do have heart problems though, like blood pressure or, you know, history of stroke or anything like that, try to get it down to the 1,500. Okay.
Is there an offset for potassium? You know, I travel a lot, so eating a meal at a restaurant, even one a day, means you can kiss goodbye staying under 2,300 milligrams of sodium.
Sure.
Assuming that you eat something else during the day. But I tend to get a lot of potassium. Does it help?
Yeah. There's research coming out that it does help. So that's why, again, eating fruits and vegetables, getting adequate amounts of those is really important, especially the ones that have potassium. And what I'll usually tell people is, yeah, if you're going to have a restaurant meal or if you're going to have a frozen meal or, you know, something high in sodium like, I don't know, sausage or bacon or something, then have a high potassium fruit or vegetable along with that meal. Now, it's not going to make the sodium go away, but it will help counteract some of that salt. So I think that's a great idea. If you can do a snack, you know, a high potassium fruit or vegetable before you go to the restaurant or whatever, or if they have one on the menu, you can do that. Anyone else? Yeah.
For eating out, I've found it's really helpful if you go online and find out what their menu is before you get there. So that way you're not sitting there forever trying to calculate and then everybody else is getting mad at you because why aren't you ordering yet? So, but if you go, most restaurants have a menu online, so figure out what you've eaten beforehand, it really helps.
Yeah, and they're changing those laws as well. So any restaurant with 20 or more, so any chain restaurant with 20 or more locations is required to have their nutrition facts somewhere available to us. So yeah, but that's the good thing is that restaurants nowadays have websites and they put all their allergy information and their nutrition content. So yeah, you can kind of work that in. Somebody else that came to a couple presentations ago recommended this as well. Whatever meal you're gonna decide to get, if you already plug that into your food journal, that will kind of help, you know what I mean? As opposed to, okay, I'm at 1,500 for the day, and then you went out and ate all that, and you're like, oh no, I'm way over. So if you already calculated into your journal, that could be helpful too. All right, if everybody could please put their chair back. Thank you for spending your Saturday morning with me.